I keep my entire life in the Apple reminders. Like sometimes my Apple reminders get up to like I think one time it got up to almost 250 reminders on there, but
That's
that's spread
insane.
out.
That's awesome. Welcome everyone to the Tech Guide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have Jason Katz on the podcast to talk about machine learning, and he is the guy just to do that. He's a senior machine learning engineer at LinkedIn. Amazing background. So I'm super excited to have him on. Jason, welcome to the show. Super pumped for you.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Yes, it's going to be a good one. But before we dive into machine learning, artificial intelligence, let's start a little bit more in college, because you were a captain of the track and field team and was voted Scholar Athlete of the Year in 2019 and won the Ivy League championship in long jump. Take me to the moment winning the Ivy League championship in long jump. Like, I feel like that's an amazing story. Share a little bit.
Yes. So yeah, it was definitely a great moment. I mean, I've been doing track and field kind of forever, and it was kind of definitely one of those peak pinnacle moments where you're training for something so hard, like that's your life, that's number one priority, and then it's that time, and you just kind of show up and make it happen. And there's nothing really greater than kind of fulfilling that particular goal that you really been shooting for.
Dude, I love that. What year were you when you won this? You were at Brown University, just
Yes.
for that. Obviously a
Yep.
great school. Like, what year were you when you won?
So I won junior year for indoor long jump, and then I defended the title senior year as well.
Dude, let's go. So we got a two-time champ on here.
Yep.
Dude, that is so cool. I'm curious on like the moments of like preparation, like before. I'm always really interested in like how a high performer, how they prepare for something, for either be a speaking event or like a sporting event like that. Like, was there anything that like really helped you prepare to like get your mindset and like get dialed in?
Mostly just the confidence in my abilities, the confidence that like I put in the work, like the difference that I always say for kind of anything you're trying to achieve. It's all about that kind of true consistency, like knowing that every single day in, day out, like all those little things add up. Coming back home at 1 a.m. from a track meet and not just going out to a party, but at 1 a.m. hopping in the ice bath in my tub in my house. Like those little things are what kind of make the difference. And then of course there's the stuff like during the meet where you have to kind of get in the right mindset, and you have your whole kind of routine and rhythm of, okay, the day before, okay, we're going to listen to certain songs, we're going to control our kind of adrenaline, and then kind of get that adrenaline peak at just the right moment, and just kind of the right kind of mentality within it. So it's a little bit of an art and a science, kind of like data science and machine learning, where you want to balance those hard skills, but also like the soft, like mental skills and kind of approach to it, because that can really make like a huge difference in a sport like that.
Yeah, I feel like that like the mental game is obviously the biggest one, but when you're putting the reps in, when you're super consistent, like you said, instead of going to a party, you're doing an ice bath, focusing on recovery. It's building those like small things where like you look at you after a whole year of doing it, you did this championship, you can look back and say, oh, I've been so consistent for so long. Like, the process has been there. Now it's time to just execute one more time. I feel like that just builds up so much more confidence in your ability to actually go out there and perform.
Yeah, exactly. And because especially since everybody's shooting for kind of the same thing. So like everybody in the Ivy League is trying to, who long jump is trying to win that long jump championship. So you really need to have that thing that says, I know I'm doing things that other people aren't doing, because you need some sort of thing to differentiate you if you want to kind of get to that top spot.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about being like a student athlete, because obviously you're at Brown University. This is like obviously a very prestigious school, Ivy League school. So you're balancing having a great academic like lifestyle, like you're getting all the good grades, but you also are balancing being like a student athlete, which is like a whole job, like full-time gig in itself.
Yeah.
Can you think a little bit more about like that balance and how you balance and like how that's like really helped you accelerate your career?
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of forced to figure it out, in the sense that like 6 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a day. That's and that's on top of everything that else comes with college. So when you kind of say you have a couple hours of work, like a few hours of work to do, like if you have practice in the morning, class in the afternoon, you have 3 hours a night, you got to do the work. There's not really the kind of open-ended nature of having the entire day at your kind of disposal. So you learn kind of what kind of works for you, and you have to figure out the systems to make it work, because things aren't going to stop. The assignments aren't going to stop. The practices and the meets aren't going to stop. So there's not there's there's deadlines for everything. So you figure out how to, especially if you want to kind of say also prioritize sleep, how to
Yeah.
get everything in those 24 hours.
Yeah, and like props to you for doing that because like someone that so I went to the University of Iowa, like I wasn't a D1 athlete, but like for like my like lifestyle for it as well, it was like, oh, like I have like I worked in college, but like at the same time I was like, oh, like I have 3 hours open a night. But if you're a D1 athlete, it's not like, oh, I just have like 3 hours just floating around. I feel like your schedule is like very built out. It's almost like
Yes, definitely. And that definitely helps. And then another thing that I found that is very helpful is I've always kind of maintained the attitude and the philosophy of doing things as soon as they come in, kind of like first in, first out almost, where a lot of people I found would struggle because they would wait till the last minute to do things. But I like to get things done as soon as I can. An assignment comes in, let me do it right away. I'm not trying to wait to the deadline because you never know when there's going to be extra things that pile up, extra social events you want to do, extra unknown that this test you actually need 10 hours to study for, not 5. So I've always found that kind of works best to kind of budget in kind of that extra, I guess, space to do things by getting things done right away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like you're the type of person that like if a course comes out, it's all online and like it's do it at your own pace and like all like the whole semester of work is there, like you're just gonna like pound it out because like you never know what's gonna happen 3 months from now. But if that assignment's already done, like you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
And I want to talk about, so let's talk a little bit then. You had this great career as a D1 athlete. You're balancing all this work, all the athletics, practices, homework, assignments, tests, all that good stuff. And then June 2019 comes around and you get really your first gig into machine learning with LinkedIn as a machine learning engineer. Intern, talk to me like how that job came about and like how you landed that job. Was it posted on LinkedIn and that's how you found it, or how did you find this job?
Yeah. So I think it started off. So I had an internship two summers before as like a data science intern with Huddle. That was my first ever internship.
Cool,
and it was a very cool gig. I didn't really have any experience in data science, machine learning before that. I had only taken my first like coding course like a few months prior. But what really helped me kind of get into the field, especially for someone who, I think it was like sophomore fall. That was my first ever coding class. And then that sophomore summer was that internship. And so I really kind of just threw myself into it. I took that class, and then over like the winter break, I took, I think like, I don't know, like 10 or 20 like online courses on like data camp, and started doing some like different stuff on my own. There was this one kind of company, or I guess not company, but the Oklahoma City Thunder, they had an internship opportunity that required like a project to be submitted. So I like did all the work for that. Never heard back. But then that project, which I put in my resume, is kind of what got me that first internship gig, because they saw that and they liked that I had taken the initiative to kind of come up with like a whole kind of end-to-end project. And that's kind of what got me in the door there. And then that kind of funneled to, okay, I had like a initial internship, and then now I actually have some experience to get the kind of first internship at LinkedIn, which I did after my junior year, which was kind of more on the data engineering end. And then that kind of just pivoted naturally into a follow-up internship with them for after my senior year with in the machine learning field.
That is really cool. I have to ask, what was the project that you built out for the OKC Thunder that landed you job at essentially?
So that was, they had like a bunch of like shot data. They go like, okay, this was the time, and this was like the location of it, and they wanted some sort of just like analytics, like kind of see what you could do. So I like took that and I created like a web app that you could kind of have like different filters in it, and like visualize, okay, like the field goal percentage of like different spots on the floor and like the expected points of the different shots. Yeah, that was the project, and I unfortunately never heard back, but that kind of led me down the path that kind of worked out best for me.
Yeah. So you were able to take all this data and then help them like visualize it through like a bunch of like applications then?
Yeah. So it was an R. It was an R studio. I think it was like Shiny R. That was like the package I used, where it would allow for that interactive kind of web interface where like the size of the bubbles would get bigger for like the higher field goal percentages or smaller for the kind of lower rated shots.
That is so cool. And then obviously it didn't work for the OKC Thunder, which I think at the time, 2015, 2016, they weren't that great. They probably had Russell Westbrook on their team.
Yeah.
But this was in KD OKC. So maybe it worked out to your favor. But that ultimately led to a job at Huddle, where you were like first like really getting to like big data, like machine.
Yeah, that was my first like real experience outside of the classroom, where I was working on like true like data science projects, like creating some other visualizations with like the real data that they had from like soccer teams and all the different like cameras they had set up to like track things during the day or during the game. Um, and then building some, it was great to learn from some of the more senior data scientists, like how to actually do things. Like when I started off at that point, I had only coded in R and I only put everything in a single file. So
Yeah.
having them be like, no, if you're trying to create something, you use multiple files and little things like that, like that kind of hands-on experience, just like learning from those people was very, very useful.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, hands-on experience is obviously like the best way to learn, and like learning from failures, like it's like so cliche to say, but like it's so true. Like the only way to really learn is to learn from failures and having that hands-on experience to say like, oh wait, I've been doing it that way. I actually be doing this way because Huddle has their stuff figured out.
Yeah.
When you think of like visualization, like what's like one or two things that someone has to get right when they're visualizing like huge amounts of data to visualize it?
I'd say one thing with visualization is oftentimes like more is less. There's like a certain cognitive load that anybody who you're kind of presenting the information to, like no matter how kind of intuitive it is, like the perceived cognitive load is useful to kind of take into account. So you could put a bunch of visualizations on the page, but like if someone sees that, they might immediately shut down and kind of get overwhelmed by everything going on. So kind of really keeping things simple and more, I'd say less is more for visualizations. And then also kind of the interactive component is always very useful. I feel like people appreciate that when you could have a certain visualization and then little knobs and dials to like filter the data in a certain way, and then that updates the visualization. I feel like I've gotten good success with that.
That's interesting. Can you share like a story of like building out like something like that where you're like able to like interact with it? Like, do you have a specific story that comes to mind that you could share with us?
I guess it's a little bit of visualization on a project I worked on where I was kind of creating this like stock picking algorithm for an Upwork client, and where you can kind of change the parameters of what you would have done. Like, okay, if this was the threshold for buying versus selling, and then you could visualize how like the profit would change over time. Like if it was like this, or if you cut down the threshold, like maybe it was a little bit more like this, or maybe there was bigger dips and valleys. That was one.
And I do want to talk like you obviously have like big data experience, but you also have some amazing machine learning experience. And just from like a very baseline level, like what would you say is like truly like the biggest difference between, or what are similarities and differences when it comes to machine learning and big data?
Big data funnels a lot of very useful kind of machine learning models, especially kind of ones that are a little bit more in structure that need to learn more, like anything like with like ChatGPT and different image stuff. Like you need kind of big data for that. I'd say kind of the overlap between data in general and kind of machine learning. I always like to think about there's like different ways, like data engineer, data scientist, and a machine learning engineer, AI research. I kind of group them, I think, more similar than most people. Like I would consider machine learning to just be a subset of data science, where data science encapsulates everything from the data cleaning, the data pipelines, which might be more data engineering, to potentially analysis, insights with visualization, and then machine learning as another part of data science at kind of the end of the project with like a predictive model to serve some sort of purpose. I think like some companies, especially like smaller ones, like a data scientist will wear all the hats. They'll be doing true data engineering work, they'll be doing true machine learning work, versus large companies like LinkedIn. Data scientists are more for like analytics and insights, and machine learning engineers are more for like actually like deploying the models and kind of testing and iterating on the models.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that difference then as well. So like you have like a data scientist, and then like you have someone like if you're at a large company, like what are some of the main I want to like keep it on that point. Like, what are some of like the main differences? If someone's thinking about like, oh, I want to go in a career in machine learning or data science at a large company, like what's like one thing that they should consider when choosing either one?
I'd say the biggest difference would probably be if you're more interested in really playing around with the data and trying to like investigate, find different trends, find different insights and analysis, and maybe do some visualization. If you're more of kind of like a data detective versus machine learning, I'd say there's kind of two quote unquote paths I like to think of with machine learning. One is kind of a little bit more practical, one's a little bit more theoretical. Practical being like you're more into really kind of some feature engineering, which is also considered a bit of data science work, and really interested in kind of iterating on models with kind of more kind of minutia, like like the optimization function or kind of the way where you're evaluating metrics. that's a little bit more practical versus there's a lot of people who are much more into the theory and the cutting edge stuff, like, oh, changing the architecture with like the transformers and a little bit more innovation, reading the research papers. So I kind of break the machine learning up into those two kind of subsets a little bit. And then that kind of varies versus the data science, which at a larger company may not be actually deploying and training models like hands-on.
Interesting. But you said at a smaller company, basically you're going to be wearing like the machine learning and the data science hats, but these larger companies can be split out a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious a little bit more like, so what talked like machine learning at LinkedIn? Obviously LinkedIn's a huge company. I mean, if you're most likely on the platform if you're in some sort of like white collar job. I'm just curious, like, can you share any like projects like that you have found really cool at like a super high level? We don't need to get too deep into it, but like, can you share any projects?
I tend to gravitate a little bit more toward like the practical feature engineering side of things. So like one project that I did, which spanned a couple quarters, was kind of feature engineering for our kind of job recommendation algorithm, which we call Jimpy. You could think that there's lots of things that would like factor into what makes a job a good match for a person. It might be, okay, on their profile, they are listed as a software engineer, or maybe that they have applied to software engineering jobs or data engineering jobs. So like different like stuff on their profile, different stuff on what we consider like activity features, like what they've applied to, what they've clicked on, what they've searched for in the past. And like what I did for a project was, okay, we have quote unquote member activity features. And I was coming up with kind of all the data pipeline work to actually come up with what are known as like job activity features. So kind of thinking on the other side of things where we say, okay, this job has been posted and it's gotten 100 applicants, and 50 of them have the title software engineer in their profile. 25 have like data scientist, and like 25 of them have like data engineer. So it's kind of more towards less of the machine learning versus if a job has 50 people who've applied to machine learning, or 50 people who've applied who are a machine learning engineer, then it's more skewed to that, even if maybe they have the same title, because sometimes jobs might be listed as software engineer, but may skew a little bit more toward data science or a little bit more toward machine learning.
That's
so great. That was like one example of like a project of I focused on kind of the feature engineering of it. And then we eventually, once those features are generated, then we actually train the model and iterate and see how that kind of goes hand in hand to improve some of the metrics that we're aiming to improve.
Yeah, I think that would be so cool. Like if you're working at like some of these large like social media companies, like the types of projects you're able to work on, just because you have access to like so much data, it has to be so cool to like have this and actually be able to make recommendations that you see on a scale across like millions and millions of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, LinkedIn, I think we just surpassed like 1 billion members. So like some of the, when we're generating some of the features, like it's literally 1 billion different profiles that we are making recommendations for.
Yeah. And I think that would be like so cool to have access to that. Like if you're making changes like a LinkedIn platform, like a X, Twitter, like Facebook, Instagram, like you're feeling that right away. And like I feel like when you're at a big company, like, so like you're going to hear the feedback from users if they like it or not. So I feel like that instant basically like feedback loop is like super important to have. And I feel like it's a good thing, but maybe it is a bad thing at some points, depending on how good the feedback is.
Yeah. So the feedback, it's always a kind of a balance between kind of individual user feedback versus generalized feedback. Because whenever you're kind of doing anything at scale, you're going to have kind of quote unquote like overfitting as you're trying to kind of have like higher recall where, okay, maybe a software engineer for some reason gets recommended a like janitor job because of some sort of thing in the black box model. So there's always going to be people who are complaining about stuff like that. But then we kind of compare that against, say, some of our like downstream metrics, like, oh, how many people are applying to jobs? Like if we're testing out a new feature, are we getting more applies, or are we getting more people who are kind of clicking like the dismiss button, which shows that a job is like very bad? So we have kind of those downstream metrics that we kind of balance versus like, oh, the more specific feedback that we could consider like kind of like bugs.
Dude, I feel like that's cool, but it always comes down to like the metrics in your following. But I also want to talk about something else that you've developed. You have a course on rational optimization, master your time, master your life. And this is a masterclass in high level health, time management, and making technology products work for you. I want to hit on the time management piece a little bit more. What's like one tip that you have for someone that's young in their career, middle, young 20s, mid 20s, for just a time management hack that you have seen work out really well?
I'd say the biggest thing that I talk about in terms of like time management, especially in the course, has to do with the way you kind of keep track of all of your tasks and what you're actually going to be doing like in your life. And I kind of break down like the difference between, okay, like lots of people use, there's like many different tools you can use. I happen to use calendars for my events and the reminders app for all sorts of kind of one-off tasks. And there's like a difference between, okay, an event which has a start and stop time versus a like specific task, like, okay, you need to download your tax form, you need to make a call to a friend, you need to schedule an appointment, which can be done at different times. And when you kind of can have a system, which I described there in much more detail, that you're very confident in, that anything in your life, you have the system like, okay, this thought comes into my mind that I need to do this. You put it in your reminders app for a certain time, and then you can kind of just forget about it, because you know that that's been documented, and you have it. It's gonna let you know at the proper time when to kind of think about it. Not necessarily when to do it, but when to kind of resurface the idea. And eventually, once you kind of build up a system that you can truly trust, that anything that you need to do is kind of documented, then it kind of frees up your mind to just be in the present moment and focus on what you need to do. And if I see that, okay, right now I don't have any reminders that have popped up that are undone, I know that there's nothing that I need to do in this moment that I am not doing. And once you can have that confidence, then you can kind of iterate on that system to kind of make it work a little bit better for you. But I think that's like the biggest tip, making sure anything that you need to do kind of gets out of your brain and into some sort of system, because like our brains are meant for kind of like creating ideas, not for storing them.
And I feel like, yeah, systemizing some sort of way, if it's a reminders, if it's putting on like an online calendar. How I do mine, I'm very open to feedback. If this is a good idea or bad idea. I just write down everything I need to get done in a day. Like, here are all the tasks, here are the meetings I have. I need to send up a follow-up message to this person, send a scope of work document to this person. But I feel like there is probably a better way to be doing that than just pen and paper.
It's definitely useful to have it on some sort of platform where you can be on the go, because we all live like lives that are moving fast. Sometimes you have your pen and paper with you, but if you're, for example, on the subway, or you're out to dinner and on your way back, it's useful to be able to have your phone to kind of show you exactly what needs to get done. And then like the reminders app, for example, can sync between Mac and your iPhone, so you can kind of have it in multiple places. And then you can even associate times with it, where you don't like, I don't have to worry about what I need to do at 9 p.m. until the reminder at 9 p.m. comes in. I can look ahead and get stuff done early, but I know that if there's nothing that's showing up, then I can just almost like forget about it, in a sense, where it then doesn't kind of leave kind of an overlooking kind of thing over your head. Oh, look, I still have 5 items on my to-do list. Like, what can I do now? Versus like, there's nothing that I said like at 3 p.m. I needed to get done before 6 p.m.
Yeah. And so when you say the reminders app, are you just talking about like the reminders app on your phone as well as like the simple,
Yeah.
Or do you have like specific app, or the one that's already built in?
No, just the built-in Apple one.
The one that's on the Apple one, that's works great for me. I know when I was not on a pen and paper system, I remember using this one like a ton. And yeah, that's just a simple way to like really open up your mind and free up your mind from like tasks that you need to do, and you just put on the back burner and have it remind you at any time. I have it pulled up right here. That's what I'm looking at. But yeah, that's all a good way.
Exactly. And like I keep my entire life in the Apple reminders. Like at sometimes my Apple reminders get up to like I think one time it got up to almost 250 reminders on there. But that's spread out.
That's awesome.
But it's very not overwhelming, because that's kind of spread out over, because you associate times with them. Like, okay, I have a reminder in 2 months for like, okay, start downloading your tax form, make an appointment with your tax account. Like, I don't need to worry about that now, but I know when I get the notification, I'm not going to forget about it because I have it in there, and then it kind of comes up then.
Dude, honestly, that's such a good idea. I think you just talked me into, I'll do like my day-to-day task on here, but when I have like reminders I need to like call someone in like 2 days, I think I'm just going to be throwing that in the reminders one. So I appreciate that one. I'm also curious of like high-level health. Like, what are some of the things that are in there regarding like high-level health?
Yeah. So number one is always sleep, hands down. I'm a very big, I'm considered a sleep nerd. There's a lot of things to kind of optimize there. And a lot of people would get a lot of bang for their buck by just kind of focusing on a lot of the basics with sleep. And that I really consider it a superpower. Like the difference between having like good, high quality, consistent sleep, like the more you can do in a day, even if you have an extra, say, 3 hours in a day, like if you're well rested, you can get done a lot more in a lot less time.
Yeah, the sleep is my biggest thing. That's been one of my biggest focus points for probably the past 2 years. I have a Whoop, which will like track all my sleep, like what my sleep performance is. And that's been honestly probably one of the best ROIs is just like getting consistent, good sleep.
Yeah.
You just feel way more energized. And yeah, like a lot of Americans, a lot of people in this world, like kind of put off sleep, even though it should be like really one of the first things that they put forward.
Yeah. And then with that, there's a lot of things besides just kind of prioritizing it and making sure you get enough. There's a lot of ways you can kind of optimize and improve it. Like, okay, changing your bed temperature, changing the way you interact with kind of blue light at night, the changing the way you set up your circadian rhythm in the morning by like seeing sunlight. There's lots of little things that can kind of fit in places, even outside of kind of your day-to-day life of just, okay, I'm going to make it a priority, but just like that fit in kind of seamlessly. That's kind of a lot of what I talk about in the course as well, identifying ways that you can kind of improve and optimize your life in what I consider like a sustainable way. If you can add this in and it's not going to add additional overhead, and once it just becomes a habit, then you reap the benefits of it forever. And that's kind of the key of making sure you're doing things like intentionally that don't add additional kind of work and cost.
Yeah, I feel like I could definitely like optimize my sleep a little bit better because like the circadian rhythm one, what I struggle with is like I get up like when the sun's still down, when like I get up at like 6 o'clock. So like this, like obviously it's so dark outside, but it's like, how do I like really get like that natural sunlight in my head? So I feel like I could definitely improve in that areas, but I just don't know how with the time that I get up at.
Yeah, and because it's tough because everyone lives kind of different schedules. So like for something like that, then there's like lots of quote unquote like sun lamps that can have like lux of up to like 10,000 lux, where you could put it somewhere in while you're doing whatever you're doing in the morning. You could put it in a room so you can get that additional kind of quote unquote sunlight to kind of spark that kind of circadian rhythm. So there's everyone with their different schedules. There's like there's some tips that are applied to everyone, but there's a lot of things that in your day-to-day life can kind of be honed in on.
Yeah, I love that. Let's sound the last one too, making technology your tool to productivity. I feel like there's been a little bit of overlap here, but what's basically covered in like this one? Because I feel like you could have so many good tips here with what you're just spitting out here now.
Pretty much that talks about all different ways to just kind of speed up all your different workflows. And I think there's a lot of stuff in there that can apply to like everybody. So like, for example, I guess I can't really demonstrate on the screen, but like one thing that I think like I truly believe like every person in the world would benefit from this by having something as simple as, you're probably familiar with the idea of like text replacement, where like if you type in like OMW, it like autocorrects to like on my way in the iPhone. You can make manual, you can make like manual ones. And I think like everybody should have, for example, like EML that auto completes to my email address. So I type in 3 characters instead of like 15 characters. And for the rest of my life, every single form that I fill out, I can type. That just saves time and a little bit of mental energy. You can do that for your email address, for your phone number, for your physical address. And that can, again, sync between your computer and your phone. And then you can kind of iterate on that to like, those would be like the basics. And you could do that for emojis. You could do that for more complex instructions. Something as simple as kind of mastering text replacements can go like a very, very long way in just being more efficient.
That's literally insane. I did not know that. That's actually like a really good tip. I feel like a lot of people could like use something like that. Like those 3 pillars are like how you like really can like your word, basically like optimize, like can have like a really good life or give you the best probability that you're going to like be successful or like at least have like a ton of energy, like be able to accomplish a lot is like those 3 pillars that you do cover.
Yeah. And especially when it doesn't add overhead. Like once you, for example, said EML to your email address, and once you do that a few times, like it's just a force of habit. You're always going to type EML instead of your actual email address. So no additional overhead. And all those little things eventually add up to have a little bit of energy. Like when you have to fill out a form and you have to type everything out, like, yes, it may save a few seconds, but also there's a little bit in your like mind that's like, oh, I have to type all this out. And it's like a little micro energy drain. And then those micro energy drains like ultimately add up over time.
They add up. That is for sure. Well, Jason, that will wind us down. We talked about a lot here, basically your life as a D1 athlete, machine learning, and your course, which I'm super interested in. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people like learn more about you and connect with you?
I'd say LinkedIn's the best place. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn, send a connection request, and then also, I guess if you want to learn more about the course, you can go to Udemy and just search for rational optimization, and then you should be able to find that there. I'd say those are the two best places.
You're the man, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.